You want to talk about get woke, go broke? Ladies and gentlemen, Bud Light, as of right now, is no longer the number one beer in the country. Now, the New York Post says Bud Light risks losing number one status in U.S. as sales plunge 25.7 in latest week. The reason they're saying that is because they're basing the top position off of a year of sales. But as of right now, Modelo has surpassed, according to this New York Post story, it has surpassed across all trade channels. Bud Light was knocked down from the top spot. Now, Modelo is owned by InBev, but doesn't control the company in the United States. I'm not sure exactly how that works out. It may not be a perfect scenario to see another Anheuser-Busch product filling in the gap where Bud Light is collapsing. But it is still extremely bad for Anheuser-Busch for two reasons. First, the destruction, the absolute evisceration of their brand because they played the silly game and got woke and went broke. They could have just apologized. We begged, Bud Light, we begged you. Just say you're sorry. Just say, look, we'll never do this again. We didn't realize this individual was so divisive. They couldn't do it. They tried pulling every gimmick in the book out, and it didn't work. They were scared they were going to offend LGBTQ people. I suppose they're still sponsoring these events. Bud Light still sponsors Pride events. They have made their bed and destroyed their brand. This is going to go down in market history. When you've got someone going to college and they're learning about marketing, they're going to say, let's talk about the Bud Light effect and how you can completely rip your brand to shreds overnight. Just destroy what was the biggest beer in the country. Now, perhaps, they argue, it will recover. I don't know for sure, but we do have a lot more news because I'm going to show you the stock for Anheuser-Busch as a whole. Because while you may say, sure, Bud Light got knocked down, but Modelo is still an Anheuser-Busch product. InBev is the parent company. Well, their stock is collapsing. Not only did they destroy the number one beer in the country and rip that brand to shreds, they have cost their stockholders untold amounts of money. And now the Bud Light effect comes for Target. And soon many other companies who decide they're going to get woke and then go broke. I think the going after kids crossed the line. You see, most people are probably like, look, I don't care if you're, wearing a pride flag shirt or something like that. But then they started going after kids. And parents stumbled upon what was coming after their kids and went, whoa, whoa, whoa. I think the Target thing, it wasn't conservatives. You can't take credit for it. Sorry. I ain't giving conservatives credit for this one. Videos started to emerge of people in Target being like, what is this? And already, like seemingly in an instant, Target announced they were moving these things because of confrontations. That means it wasn't conservatives pointing it out, then a backlash, then Target's reaction. It was a backlash, conservatives pointing it out, the reaction. That means the reaction was not because of conservatives. It was because regular people were seeing these things and saying, yo, I don't want my kids exposed to this. But I'll break that all down for you. Let's start with the huge news, one of the biggest cultural victories for the right we've ever seen. The New York Post says Bud Light sales suffered their worst week ever, falling 25.7%, endangering its status as the world's number one beer brand, according to the latest data provided to the Post on Tuesday. Okay, so I see what they're saying. They're saying that it could lose number one in the world. It already lost number one in the country. The plunge follows a 24.6% decline from the previous week, and the sixth straight week sales have been hit since the Dylan Mulvaney controversy, going on nearly 2 months. The precipitous drop has narrowed the gap in sales between Bud Light and nearest rival Modelo Especial, which saw its sales surge 9.2 for the week ending May 20th, according to Bump Williams Consulting and Nielsen IQ data. Quote, while Bud Light loses week after week, Modelo Especial gains week after week, and now Modelo outsells Bud Light on a national basis across all trade channels combined. Bump Williams, who runs the consulting firm, told the Post, if this continues, Modelo will surpass Bud Light for the year. In the nation, Anheuser-Busch InBev owns both brands, but it does not control Modelo in the U.S., where it is owned by New York-based conglomerate Constellation Brands. Now, I don't know what that means. How do you own both brands, but it's owned by someone else in the U.S.? I have no idea. Whatever that means. And I'll point it out because you could say that Anheuser-Busch owns the rights to Modelo around the world, but not in the U.S. But how could it own Modelo, but not control Modelo? Is Modelo in the U.S. separate? In which case, either way, Anheuser-Busch doesn't control it. They do control Bud Light. Bud Light getting knocked down is a gut punch. I mean, it's more than a gut punch. It is monumental. That's what they say. That's a monumental decline, Williams told the Post. Modelo has surpassed Bud Light for the first time since it was launched in 1982. Bang. So here's the Wikipedia for Modelo. Just so you can see, they say that it is owned by InBev, AB InBev. So same company, a lot of money to be made. Listen, 30%. That's so 29.5 was a different sales metric. I don't know what the 25% they cite is because the other day, there's two different numbers they give for sales, whatever. Let's just say between 25 and 30%. Look, we're not talking about single digit drops where they get angry and say, oh, we're losing money. We're talking about apocalyptic brand collapse because they sponsor Dylan Mulvaney. Let me just make sure it's very clear to all of these companies. You must be very careful about the people you sponsor. Following the algorithm does not mean you will do right. Dylan Mulvaney's a lot of followers, but I think most people are off put. And I'm being nice by Dylan Mulvaney's behavior. They say the backlash has also caused sales of other AB brands to dive. For the week ending May 20th, Budweiser dropped 11.2, Michelob Ultra 6.5, Busch Light 5.2, and Natty Light down 4.9. Wow. Yingling, which bills itself as America's oldest brewery, has seen sales of Yingling Flight soar by a whopping 47.6%, and its lager spiked by 32 in the 4-week period. Holy crap. Wow. Yingling, of course, not available in most of the country. So a lot of people are begging Yingling to actually sell their beer. I got to say, like, when it comes to beer, it's probably my favorite. I'm not a big beer drinker, but typically if we go out, we do get a beer. It's going to be Yingling. And they posted a picture of a Yingling beer held up with an American flag. So I just got to say this. If you're looking for a beer to buy that unabashedly posted an American flag and said, how things going, you buy Yingling. You can also, I strongly recommend against consuming alcohol and do not go and buy alcoholic products. I'll say that. I'm just saying Yingling supports America. I'll put it that way. Yeah. And I'm not promoting any of you drink alcohol because, to be honest, I don't want to get wrapped up in the whole a beer company boycott thing is working and there's better brands. I think all in all, alcohol is probably really, really bad for you, but I get it, you know. So my personal recommendation is nobody should drink any beer. But people do, and you're allowed to enjoy it. And I had a beer the other day, but, I recommend against it. Granted, Yingling is a much better company. So it is what it is. Take a look at this. Anheuser-Busch InBev. Oh, man. It's just apocalyptically bad. In the past 5 days, they are down 7.09%. And look at these cliffs. Bang, down, bang, down, bang, down again. And as of today, they are down 2%, $53.35. In the past month, 17.45%. Absolutely crazy. In the past 6 months, they're down 9.39. Year to date, it is a 10.47 drop. Now, here's why it's important. Anheuser-Busch was going up in March. They hit a high of $66.73. They were on cloud nine. They were like, our stock is way up. Is that as high? Look at that. Okay, it's been higher, mind you. It was at $100 in 2018. So that's unfortunate. And they're way down from their main peak in 2016, where it's just been dropping and dropping and dropping. This year, they started to see a little bit of recovery, and they were very happy to see it. And then they said, I got an idea. Come April 1st, they said, at the height of their stock, what a coincidence, they sponsored Dylan Mulvaney, who put out a video, and then right away the stock started to go down, drop, goes up a little bit, hits 65, and then it is a free fall. At the start of the year, they were at $59.60, and right now, 53.37. But I am telling you, my friends, I think it's going to get worse. Now, this is Anheuser-Busch InBev as a whole, their whole company. You can see Bud is the name on the New York Stock Exchange. I wonder what's going to happen if their stock drops off to like $3. Could that destroy the company? I don't know. I will just say this. Why would anyone hold stock in Anheuser-Busch right now? For real. Bud Light is no longer the top beer. If I scroll over a little bit to the right, you can see this. Molson Coors is up 2.47. Constellation Brands, which controls Modelo in the U.S., up 1.35. Heineken's down. Okay, trade in euros. Boston Beer Company, 2.34. Let's do this. Let's pull up Molson Coors. They're up 2.45% today. Here's what I see. If you really wanted a beer stock, like let's say regular guy is holding stock in a beer company because he's like, people love beer. For me, I recommend against it. It's alcohol. Poison. But the average person, I totally get it. Do your thing. Don't let me get in your way. So you've got a regular guy, and he's like, beer always, that's what they say. In a depression, people drink. To celebrate, people drink. So they go and buy a beer stock. Budweiser embroils itself in a major controversy. Why hold Budweiser? Why wouldn't they buy Molson Coors? They'd be like, beer's beer. Go with the company that's not in a controversy, the company that's growing. So this is the issue. In the past 5 days, Molson Coors is up 0.39% up. In the last month, they're up 2.33%. In the past 6 months, Molson Coors is up 12.25%. And you can see when the controversy kicked off on April 1st, Molson Coors stock skyrocketed. That means on April 1st, if you bought in Molson Coors at $51, it was the dip. You hit a peak of 65 and are currently sitting at 61.86. If you held on to your Budweiser, it was the inverse. You are now at 53 from 66. So what happens to the smart people? They see the controversy. They immediately sell. They immediately buy Molson Coors, and they made a ton of money. So why would anyone keep holding Anheuser-Busch if the stock is in free fall? It's a panic sale. The news is not improving. The news is getting crazier every day, and they still won't apologize. After 30% collapsing, after their stock collapsing, after Modelo surpassing, they still will not apologize. And they sponsored another Pride event. Their customers are screaming in their face, stop. And they said no. So the brand is collapsing. Now, you may say it's the collapse of an institution, whatever, but Molson Coors is also, it's like Miller and Bud were the big American beer brands. That's it. Tanking, they go. Wow. So here's what I think. I think the average person sees the Bud stock and says, I can't hold on to this anymore. It's like, could you imagine seeing like it's an 15% drop off? So if you're looking at your 401k and you've lost 15% on this, I can't imagine anybody wanting to keep holding it. Seriously, I don't know why anybody with Bud stock would keep it. Do they think it's a dip and it's going to recover? It keeps going down. It's only getting worse. At what point do you say, get off this train and wait to see when it bottoms out? I imagine a lot of people will do that. Year to date, down 10.55%. As of today, it's at minus 2.11. That's crazy. If you sold yesterday, you'd have had more money. If you sold on Friday, you'd have sold at 57. But you waited. And then it hit this week, last week, so this week, 54. Now it's even worse. I'm not going to tell you what to do. I don't want to give you any financial advice. My point is simply this. I don't understand why anyone holding it now would keep holding on to it, because it's going to get worse. Take a look at this from Target Corp. Today, they are down 0.11%. Not apocalyptic, but they saw a spike and then a drop. So it's down from their previous close. In the past 5 days, they are down 8.67%. In the past month, 15%. That's how long the Target controversy has been going on. In the past 6 months, 20% down. But here's what matters. You can see that Target was actually doing well in February, and they went down a little bit, but they were fairly stable with a small decline. And then the controversy hit. Target got rocked by this boycott, and bang, from May 17th to today, they are down from 160 to 133. The same thing. Meanwhile, Walmart is up. I don't know how much Walmart is up. I'm not here to lie or play games. Let's actually take a look at the raw Walmart numbers. As of today, they're up 0.66. In the past 5 days, they're down 0.66. So they're doing way better than Target is, despite still being down. In the past month, they're down 3%. So that is to say, from 151 at the start of the controversy to 147, you lost a little bit. But if you're holding Walmart, you did a lot better. And then we have this, my friends, over in Urban Dictionary. The Bud Light effect has now become canon, describing the process by which a company adopts less than popular products or advertising and then sees their market share rapidly decline. May 25th. With the success of the Bud Light boycott, companies now fear the Bud Light effect hitting them if they adopt woke policies or sell woke products. Target loses $12 billion in 14 days. Retail giant's market cap plummets after the longest losing streak in 5 years as shares drop to lowest level in a year amid Pride tuck-friendly swimwear controversy. Imagine you're just imagine, and many of you probably experienced this. You're with your wife and kids, you're with your husband and kids. You walk into a Target, and there on the shelf is tuck-friendly. And your 7-year-old goes, "What does tucking mean, Dad?" And you're like, "Oh my God. What does tucking mean?" And then they go and they say, "How dare you put this in front of my children?" The left says it's just about being friendly to LGBTQ. What parent wants to have their child ask them about tucking? They don't. Unless you're like a creepy liberal family that's into, grooming kids or something. I think what we saw with this backlash was regular people who aren't political having to explain to their children how they're not old enough to know what tucking is. And the kid being like, "But it's right here at Target. Everybody's walking past it." Ideas you don't want your children engaging with until they're a bit older. And they can understand that the world is full of different kinds of people. Which brings me to this story here from the National Review. Sometimes a onesie is just a onesie. Oh boy. Philip Klein, or How I Became a Villain in the Culture War. And he says, "I don't have a problem with this. If somebody wants to dress their baby in a pride onesie, why should it matter? We're not talking about transitioning minors here. It's just a shirt." So grooming. Grooming typically refers to slowly indoctrinating someone, typically a child, into a certain set of behaviors or ideas. Usually it's revolving around adult activities. So why is this grooming? Okay, let me explain. Grooming is a word that exists to represent in bringing someone into the lightest form of a thing, okay? Grooming is not when an adult shows adult objects to children. That's like overt exploitation, and that's called there's actually a name for that. It's a crime. In order to groom someone, you have to start by showing them the lightest form of it. That is, have a baby grow up asking questions about what this flag represents, overt sexuality. Typically, when kids are born, we don't put sex symbols and stuff on their clothing. Now, there are attractive men and attractive women in the public, but that's just people who are attractive. If there is a man who is ripped and smiling and holding up his forearms. You don't know if he's gay or straight. He's not embracing a woman. If there's a guy and a woman and they have their arms around each other, not overtly sexual. There can even be photos of like two dudes with their arms around each other, not overtly sexual. But then you introduce the flag, level 1, the most basic example. And a child says, what does that mean? And the parent then explains the basic concepts of sexuality to a child, which typically doesn't happen until the child is a bit older and the parents deem it appropriate. This is why I don't think this should be for children. I got no problem if, a parent decides their child is now old enough. But what they're doing is in stores showing products that are overtly sexual. And the left says, it's not sexual. It's not. It's about love. Love is love, it says right there. It's not. Lesbian, gay, bisexual. Those words literally reference to whom you are sexually attracted to. That's what it is. That's why the phrase is homosexual. Sexuality. Some children, most children, not ready to be exposed to adult information, these ideas. So parents decide when the birds and the bees conversation becomes appropriate. For babies wearing onesies, probably not. The left argues that it's good to normalize these things for kids. No. When you see the videos of guys wearing dog masks being pet by children, or drag queens bringing children on stage and men walking around in thongs, all of these videos exist, or drag queens giving lap dances to children in schools, which also happened, it's like, okay, these things are not appropriate for children. That's grooming. The left just denies it and says, we don't define grooming that way. I don't care how you define it. Your boos mean nothing. I've seen what makes you cheer. So, Philip, that's why people are upset. Ben Shapiro says, because indoctrinating children into sexual fluidity is extraordinarily destructive. And yes, it is the predicate philosophy for transitioning minors. So he writes his article. I don't really care much for his argument, but to make the point, this stuff is not appropriate for babies and children. Children in kindergarten should not be running around asking who's gay and who's not, but we're seeing this stuff. And that's why in Florida, they said no sex ed for kids to kindergarten. Now they've expanded it. Just not doing the sex ed stuff. Parents should decide. You know what? Those parents may decide a baby. Fine. But don't sell the product in the front of your store so that parents who don't think it's fine are now being asked questions by their young children. That's the problem. There's a lot going on. And I want to wrap this all up and just say, you won. You won. Bud Light is no longer the top-selling beer in the country. Think about that. Crack open an ultra light an ultra right conservative dad's beer or a Yingling or whatever it is you have on hand and celebrate. Next segment's coming up at 4 p.m. over on this channel, actually. So thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.